Hello, hello.
Hello,
We are back
hello. We are
live in
back
the
live
studio
in the
today,
studio
108
today.
Praise.
108
We are
Praise. We
talking
are talking
about the
about
master
the master
relationship mechanic
relationship
show, our
mechanic
brother
show, our brother
Tuesday night,
Tuesday
having
night,
your best
having your best
relationship with God,
relationship with
self,
God,
and
self,
then
and then
others.
others.
So if we get that
So if we
order
get that
correct,
order correct,
we can have
we
our
can
best
have our best
relationships.
relationships.
Tonight, we're talking
Tonight
about
we're
how
talking
to
about
have our
how to
best
have our best
relationship with self.
relationship with
If
self.
you all know,
If
we're
you
on
all
this
know we're on this
musical theme, this
musical theme, this
musical journey this
musical journey this
month,
month,
more than just the
more than
lyrical
just the
message.
lyrical message.
We're talking
We're
about
talking
the
about
music,
the
the
music,
message. You
the
see, I'm
message.
listening to
You see, I'm
myself in
listening to
multiple
myself in
places now. I
multiple
just heard
places now. I
myself
just
come
heard
on
myself
again.
come on again.
But
But
tonight we're talking
tonight we're
about
talking
the
about
message,
the
the
message, the
science
science
behind the
behind
music,
the
and
music,
what
and
effect it
what
has
effect
on
it
our
has on our
relationship.
relationship.
And so
And
in
so
that, we
in
have to
that, we
think
have to
about
think
why do
about
we
why do
listen to
we listen
music?
to
What
music?
type of
What type
music
of
do we
music do we
choose?
choose?
How does it
How does it
impact our
impact our
relationships? Is
relationships?
it
Is it
positive? Is it
positive? Is it
negative?
negative?
And tonight
And
we have
tonight
the
we have the
pleasure of
pleasure of
having
having
actually
actually
real
real
Sims on the
Sims
line
on the
with us,
line with us,
Dr. Sims. He's
Dr.
going to be
Sims.
telling
He's
us
going to be telling us
the
the
relationship
relationship
scientist. He's going to be
scientist. He's
telling
going
us
to be
the
telling us the
science
science
behind the
behind the
music and
music
how it
and how
affects
it
our
affects our
relationships.
relationships.
So
So
I'm really
I'm really
intrigued and really
intrigued, really
interested in
interested
having
in
that
having that
conversation
conversation
because
because
I mean, I
I
love
love
music.
music.
I know how
I
it
know how
affects
it
me
affects me
sometimes in a
sometimes
different
in a
way,
different way,
positive and
positive
negative,
and
but I
negative,
would
but I would
love to
love to
hear the
hear the
science
science
behind it
behind it
and how
and
it
how it
actually
actually
works on
works
our
on our
psyche, on our
psyche, on our
heart, on
heart,
our
on our
mind.
mind.
And when I
And
say
when I
that,
say that,
on our
on
heart,
our heart,
it took me
it
to the
took me to the
scripture,
scripture,
actually
actually
Matthew
Matthew
12,
12,
34. The
34.
B
The
part
B part
is what I
is
want
what
to
I want
focus
to
on.
focus on.
Is for the
Is for
mouth
the mouth
speaks out
speaks
of that
out of
which
that which
fills the
fills the
heart.
heart.
And what it
And
made
what
me
it
think
made me
about
think
is
about
the
is the
music.
music.
Music fills our
Music
heart.
fills
It's
our
the
heart. It's
seed
the
that we
seed
plant
that
in
we
there,
plant
whether
in
it's
there,
the
whether it's the
lyrics, whether
lyrics,
it's the
whether it's the
beat,
beat.
it's the
It's the
attitude, it's the
attitude, it's the
tone that we
tone
get
that we get
when we
when
talk to
we talk to
people
people
because it's
because
that
it's that
music that
music that
places down
places
in our
down in our
soul and our
soul and
beat.
our beat.
So you
So
got to
you
think
got to
about it.
think
What are
about it.
you
What are
listening
you
to? What
listening
is
to? What is
filling your
filling
heart?
your
And then
heart?
how
And
does
then
it come
how does
out of
it come
your
out of
mouth?
your mouth?
So
So
it makes
you
you think
makes
about
you think
that
about
old
that old
adage.
adage.
It's not
It's
what you
not
say,
what
but
you say,
how
but
you
how
say
you
it.
say it.
So
So
we'll think
we'll
about
think
that
about that
today when we're
today when
talking
we're
and
talking and
dialoguing with
dialoguing
Dr.
with Dr.
Sims and
Sims
how
and
that
how that
impacts our
impacts our
relationship in a
relationship in a
positive and
positive
negative
and
way.
negative way.
Last week we
Last
talked
week we
about
talked about
the
the
power of
power of
worship
worship
with an
with
awesome
an
worship
awesome
leader
worship leader.
because what it
Because
does
what it
is
does
our
is our
worship
worship
is
is
our
our
prayers
prayers
put to
put to
music so we can
music
have
so
an
we can have an
intimate
intimate
dance and
dance
voice
and
and
voice and
relationship where we're
relationship
making
where
a
we're making a
joyful noise
joyful
into
noise
God.
into God.
And tonight
And
we're
tonight
talking
we're
about
talking about
how do we
how do
have
we
that
have
inner
that inner
dance with
dance with
ourselves when we're
ourselves when
listening
we're
to
listening
music,
to
when
music,
we're
when we're
listening to the
listening to the
lyrics?
lyrics?
How do we
How do we
dance with
dance with
ourselves?
ourselves?
Is it
Is
in
it in
chaos? Is it
chaos?
out of
Is it out of
order? Are
order?
we
Are we
creating
creating
inside of
inside of
our
our
church
church
a
a
disharmony because
disharmony because
of the
of the
music, of the
music, of
lyrics
the
that we
lyrics that
listen
we
to
listen to
in the
in the
world?
world?
And we call
And we call
ourselves the
ourselves the
Christian
Christian
body. How
body.
is it
How is it
affecting
affecting
us
us
and turn
and turn
around and
around and
affecting our
affecting our
relationships?
relationships?
So that's
So
something that we
that's
really
something
have
that
to
we
think
really have
about
to think about
tonight,
tonight,
how that
how
effect
that
is
effect is
occurring on
occurring
our
on
life.
our
And
life.
I'm looking
And I'm
forward to
looking
having
forward
that
to having that
conversation with Dr.
conversation with
Sims
Dr.
tonight,
Sims tonight,
our
our
relationship
relationship
scientist.
scientist.
He has some
He has
wonderful
some
things that
wonderful
he's
things that he's
bringing to
bringing
us.
to us.
For the rest
For
of
the
this
rest of
month,
this
I've
month, I've
had
had
this
this
thing about
thing
music.
about
And y'all
music,
know I
and
like
y'all know I
lyrics.
like lyrics.
So I
So I
found this
found this
awesome
awesome
ministry leader.
ministry
She's
leader.
not just a
She's not just a
ministry leader.
ministry leader.
She's a
She's a
singer, she's a
singer, she's a
songwriter, and
songwriter,
she
and
just
she just
released her
released
new
her new
single.
single.
And it is
And
Miss
it is Miss
Diane
Diane
Lynette,
Lynette,
and it's
and
called
it's called
Move Me.
Move
And
Me.
when I
And
listen
when
to
I
the
listen to
lyrics,
the
that's what we're
lyrics, that's
talking
what we're
about.
talking
How
about.
does the
How does the
music move
music
us?
move us?
How does the
How does
Holy
the Holy
Spirit enter
Spirit
us
enter us
and deal
and
with us
deal with
in
us
our
in our
lives? How
lives?
is it
How
moving
is it
us? Is it
moving us?
moving
Is
us
it
in a
moving us in a
positive or a
positive or
negative
a
way?
negative
So
way? So
those are the
those
things
are
that
the
we
things
need
that
to
we
think
need to
about.
think about.
How does
How does
music
music
impact us?
impact us?
Our
Our
internal dance
internal
that we're
dance that
having
we're
music, and how does it come out with our partners? How does it come out with God? With that external dance that that music is making. Dr. Sims is joining us on the line. He's going to empower us in a way that we can understand the science behind the music and how it impacts our relationship. So we're going to jump in and hear our song "Move Me" by Diane Lynette. And then the next voice that you will hear is Dr. Sims.
Hello, hello. We are back, and as I promised, we have an awesome guest tonight, Dr. Sims. He is the relationship scientist, and I said this month was about music, the lyrical message, the beat. He's going to give us the information, the science behind music, how we have our interpersonal dances with ourselves based on the music we listen to. Remember, the scripture I gave you all was Matthew 12:34, the B part. So if you're just tuning in, Matthew 12:34, the B part. For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. And what we have to realize is that music and different information fills our hearts, gets into our soul, and that's what we speak from. We speak from that place in our lives. So we have to be very careful about that to understand the science of music. And so, all right, Dr. Sims, I know you told me a little secret about you when we had a little line that you used to be previously a vocalist, but I promise I wasn't going to ask you to sing. But I know that impacts you in a way as well as having that background and that history in music to know how that actually empowers and impacts relationships. So I saw that you wrote an ebook, Why Do We Love Music? What actually pushed you to write that book, and how has it helped other couples and people in their relationships, that ebook?
Because we talked about before, me being into music, I'm going to do a thing that's called, we changed it, Love Songs, Love Lessons. And the Love Songs, Love Lessons is that back in the day, there was always meaning in our songs. And you know, it wasn't like, I mean, today, you know, they're trying to get back to it. But that was our therapy. That was our counseling when we actually listened to our Motown songs, because they all had meanings in it. And it was like a therapy to us. And I just remember when I was in a band, everybody had to write a song. And I was always writing songs, love songs. And, you know, they were always getting pissed off because they were like, hey, what's going on? Can we, you know, where's the dance music? And I'm like, I just want to talk about love, right? And so because it was so important to me that people needed to hear some type of advice. And if they can get that advice through music, you know, it will help couples a lot, which it did back in the day. You know, like, again, we didn't go to therapy, you know, we didn't go to counseling, you know, it was, you know, we based our relationship from the songs, you know. And so Love Songs, Love Lessons,
when Barry White told you to do
absolutely. I mean, this is how some men knew how to be romantic, right? You know, from Cut Off the Lights, right? Teddy Pendergrass, you know. So we learned a lot from music and from the lyrics, too, because it came from the heart when people were actually writing these songs. And it came from true experiences, too. And, you know, I mean, from gospel, from slavery music, you know, all the way to R&B, right? Even some rock, you know, some Bootsy, you know, they all had meaning. If you listen to the words, it all had some type of meaning. So Love Songs, Love Lessons is to actually have something that's called a keynote performance, where I'm actually having artists to sing, and then I come on the stage and I break down the song and the science of why did you write this song and what does this really mean. And so I decided to go ahead and write the ebook too as well, for people to understand a little bit more about how music affects us and how it can help us to have a vitalized, harmonious, cohesive working relationship. I hope I answered it.
Well, when you say that, you know, when you talk about Motown was our therapy and we listened to the lyrics because of the heart and their experience in it, would you say the lack of therapy, the lack of advice in relationships and depending strictly on somebody else's experiences and experiences in their heart, can those messages also be a negative in our lives?
Well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, especially when you hear certain songs, right? Because we're talking about something. Well, you know, it actually probably too. If you've seen the ebook too, you know, sound and music, it goes back to when we're in the womb, right? When we're like 17 to 19 weeks old, sound was developed, you know, as a fetus. I mean, that was one of the first things that was a sense, one of our first sense that's developed after touch. So memory is so important when it comes to music, because it stores when we experience certain traumatic or good experiences during that period, whatever music is going on at that time, or whatever song that you're probably in love with that happened during that period, it's going to be stored in the part of our brain that's called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is where we store information, right? And if it's something that happened to us traumatic during a certain period, or during a certain period of music that we really listen to or like, when we hear that music, what happens is it'll also stimulate our hippocampus and bring that memory back. It happens both ways, positive or negative. That's why when you hear a song, and a lot of people go, as soon as you hear an old song, and then people go, oh, hey, you know, and we get these goosebumps, and that's where goosebumps came from, you know, hearing the music would give us those goosebumps. And we think about the olden time. We think about that good time. We think about a concert that we were at. You know, we think about the house party. I don't know where you're from. I'm from Chicago originally. And
house party beginning.
Yes, you know, we had house parties, right? You know, before clubs came out, right? You know, and so it reminds you of a certain house party. It reminds you of a certain slow dance that you had. It can also remind you of some rejections. You know, you remember this song with this girl that you really liked, and, you know, you had a crush on her, and you went to ask her to dance when this certain song came on, and she told you no, and you never got a chance to dance with her. And that gets stored in your hippocampus, in your memory. Every time you hear that song, you'd be like, oh, man, that's when Donna turned me down. I really had a crush on her. I really wanted to dance with her. You know, so, yeah, you're so right. It can, negative or positive, it could bring back, it could trigger, you know, depending on what you're going through during that period. Yeah.
And now this new generation music that we have, where we have this freedom of speech, of lots of vulgarity and lots of things that are in it. How do you feel that impacts our communication with each other? Do you think it has changed in that generation, like you say, in that Motown? Was there a little bit more respect to each other because that was not so easy, that communication? And now that communication in music has changed, has that changed our communication with each other and our relationships, from our jobs to how we talk to our inner selves, because we become acceptance of certain language and saying it's all right for us to call ourselves that, and then we accept it from other people, and then we just become so accepting of certain language that we began to just speak it like it's the regular language in our lives now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the danger of it, because our brains are plastic, and meaning it could keep putting more and new information into our brains. And that new information, too, is the thing that's called the substantia nigra in our brain. And our brain is vulnerable to new things. So when we hear new things, it stimulates the substantia nigra part of our brain. And that could be a danger, because, yes, when we hear the music that's out right now, and accepting these terms in the music, right? The words in the music, the titles in the music, you know, calling ourselves certain titles, or calling women certain titles, right? And the more we hear that, again, because my brain is plastic, the more we hear that, it's conditioning our brain. It's actually storing this information and conditioning our way of how we're going to think, and how we're going to look at each other, and how we're going to judge each other when it comes to music. Because, again, especially today, when it's destructive music, if we're not careful, right, we become it. We become it. And that's, again, just like I talked about, back in the day, we listen to music for its therapy, right? The people are doing the exact same thing right now. They're listening to the music as a therapy, and it's conditioning them. And that's why it's really important to monitor the music that your kids are listening to, or at least try your best. And I think it's very responsible for musicians too, to realize, and they don't realize this. They don't realize what we're talking about right now. They think, oh, they're going to be okay. But they don't realize what's happening, the frequency of us hearing these sound waves that are actually going into our brain, and what it's actually doing and how it could damage our brain too as well.
Yeah, see, what you're talking about is that elasticity of how we just keep stuff stored up. And I'm not proclaiming that people of the Christian body should not listen to secular music, by no means, because I love secular music. Secular music has its place in life, and I'm not saying that. But I think even as a Christian body, we have allowed certain type of music, even in a place, sometimes it's not even the words, sometimes, like you say, it's the music itself of being responsible as an artist. What are we splicing in, overlaying on songs, and you put that into a Christian song, and you remember what that song really references, because you hear the beat from a previous song, and now it's brought into the church house as if it is a Christian song, but in your mind, you're still singing the beat and singing the words to the secular song. So we have to be very careful when we're doing that cutting and splicing of songs.
Yes.
Responsibility and accountability, as you say, because I think it has been that line has been crossed and bled into so much that it's not that it should be like Christian music per se, but it should be, if we've gotten so beyond worldly that there is no distinction in our conversation and our intimate dance with God, and if we're dancing with the world. And that's why I say, if we're not careful, our inner man dances beyond everything. Because I know I said in a previous show, I can tell my husband's mood by the music that he's playing when he comes in the door. So if he's playing a little blues, a little old school down from the Mississippi, from the juke joint, I know we're in a good place. He's rocking it that night. But, so it's that music that sets the tone, and we have to really be careful the tone that we're setting in our lives and how that, where it takes us. I can remember, I don't even remember when the song came out, but I can remember that song used to make me drive fast, because when I used to hear it, it was this song, "You're Making Me Drive Dirty." I don't know if you remember that song out from the West Coast. Right. It was when it came out. So you're thinking about the lyrics in the song, so you can either, and I used to just like be driving fast, because I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to get no ticket because nobody going to catch me riding dirty. And I'm like, now, I'm doing the opposite of what this song is saying. I'm actually sitting out here doing something to get you've gotten into the words, and I'd be like, okay, switch song. Listen to something else. And so if we're not careful, we set ourselves up for that sometimes. Like the music we listen to before we go into work, the music we listen to before we have conversations with our spouses, music we listen to before we make real major decisions in our lives. They've impacted or shifted us in a direction, not necessarily that's for the positive. So
in other words, music makes sense to us on such a deep primal and soulful level. It's impossible for us not to fall in love with it, right? Because of that beat, too. That beat. And it also goes back to our culture, right? And listening to that beat can also grab you, because even today, I do find myself sometimes, although I don't know what the lyrics are, and then sometimes I'm shocked. When people tell me, they be like, you know what he's saying, right? You have a little niece or a nephew to explain, I was like, oh my God, I've been just bobbing off of that. Like you said, when you're driving, right? And the music, that beat, And that's that beat that goes all the way back, especially to, for us as African Americans, we have that, from that African descent, being very tuned into that beat, and also, music is also neurologically, the triggers the natural occurrence that feels good. That's when we're hearing that beat, what's happening is that we're actually releasing the feel good, the dopamine in our brain, and that taps deeply into our emotions or fear, like we talked about earlier too as well, and directly stimulates the areas of our brain which houses memory. So, so you're right. We have to be careful too, because it has so much effect because it's so soulful to us, and I mean to all human beings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying African Americans, but because they all have their type of music too as well. That touch them, and I love all type of music, everything.
Me too.
And from classical to on, so I like it all because it all has a different effect on your body, right? It could motivate you, it could stimulate you, and it could relax you, right? That's why we listen to classical music, jazz, country, something that's lower, and then we listen to something that's higher. And what it's doing, too, is giving us that rush. It's giving that altered state of consciousness, that euphoria and that dopamine, and it's putting us in that state, right? And it's going to the pleasure center part of our brain, the caudate nucleus, the nucleus accumbens part of our brain. And when it goes into that, it's giving us pleasure. And that's what makes us so happy. That's why we love music. And like you said, you have to be careful, though. You're in the car, and that beat could cause you to drive fast and swerve in and out. And next thing you know, you pulling over because you're driving dirty, right?
Yeah. When you were talking, I wonder if you can, because you were talking about the positive things, but now how can you tell if music is pushing you towards some negative habits? It's enraging you. It's got you, when you listen to a song, it's got you going back to drinking. It's got you going back to smoking. It's got you in bad habits. How and what do you suggest? And I'm not talking about people just saying, I'm going to take a fast from music and never listen to it again. But how do we curb some of that so we can get positivity back in our relationships where we're not, going back to those bad habits or actually being enraged by music, so that we're not taking that negativity out on other people? What would be your tips, and how do you recognize that? Because some people like that behavior in themselves.
Because what was the last part? Because what?
I said, how can you recognize it in yourself? Not point. We good at pointing it out in other people.
Oh, yeah.
But how can I recognize that? Okay, music is doing something to me that's not good. It's making me drink. It's making me smoke. Making me hang out a little too late. Making me get tickets because I'm driving fast. Making me go in the house mad. Those kind of issues. Gonna get me fired at work. Because it got me a little bit too cocky, too confident when I show up.
Yeah. Good question, because what it is that you have to be mindful of it. You have to be, more mindful. But how do you be mindful of it? And see, that's the thing. The great thing is in order to be mindful of it, is because of what you're doing right now. So when people see what we're seeing right now, which makes people go, oh, I didn't think about that. Let me evaluate myself, right? Because if we don't talk about this, if we don't talk about that, how music can be a positive or a negative. Remember back in the day when people would tell you to spin an album backwards and then you can hear some rock groups would put, right? But we were mindful because somebody told us about it, right? So that's one of the major things, is that we have to keep talking about it. Because if we don't talk about it, kids aren't educated about it. Or adults, they're not educated about it. So somebody like you, this is one of your callings for you to even do this, because this is so important to bring it to our attention so we can be mindful. Because if we don't hear this, what we're talking about right now, we think everything is fine, right? And so what you're doing right now is a blessing to people, because now this is going to make them evaluate themselves and say, well, what do I do when I listen to music, right? how fast do I drive when I listen to certain music, right? You know, what effect does it have on how I look at women, right? Mm-hmm. What effect does it have on what I call women, right? What effect does it have when I'm angry toward men, right? You know, like I'll bust your windows out your car, right? And right, because sometimes people hear that and women think, well, this is cool, this is okay, right? And we cheerleader that, right? And we go, oh yeah, I'll bust your windows out your car, because when your man is not calling you, or you think that maybe somebody is, you know, is over his house, right? Well, what's the first thing that you think that you should do? Oh, let me go get a bat and bust the windows out his car, right? You know, so we tend to, I mean, that's the effect that music has on us, you know, and we have to be mindful and go, oh, wait a minute, no, that's a video, and if I go bust the windows out his car, I can go to jail. But we don't think that at the time when it comes to our emotional part of our brain, the limbic part of our brain. And when that kicks in, we are not thinking rationally. You know, our prefrontal cortex now is not telling us, you know, hey, wait a minute, whoa, you know, you have to think reasonable. This is not cool. You know, some people may even put the song on, I bust the windows out of his car while she's on the way driving to his house. You know, so that's really motivating her, right? She's like, yeah. You know, so we have to be mindful. It's really what you're doing, right now. And this video that's going to reach billions of people, and that's going to trigger them. That's going to alert them to be more mindful of how they respond to music. You know, and it's a good thing too to evaluate that and go, hey, wow, I wonder what happens to me when I listen to classical music. You know, I wonder what's going on when I'm listening to jazz. And so you're forcing people now to be more mindful of their human behavior when they're listening to those certain type of music. Yeah, it's a good question. Great question.
Yeah, I think we take a lot of things for granted, that we're strong enough, it doesn't affect us, and we've become so, I got that handled, it doesn't bother me. But the thing is, as a responsible parent, as a responsible Christian, as a responsible adult, even to just ourselves, we really have to be careful of what's playing in our environment. I can remember when I was pregnant with my last child, who was going to turn 20 this year, and the big thing that was going on then was play Mozart. Play Mozart while you're pregnant, and your child will be a wonderful mathematician. I don't know if you heard that, you know, play Mozart. And we listen to so much classical music to the point now she can't stand it.
Right.
But I mean, that's why I say it really, you know, it has its place. But I believe we sometimes listen to so much of it and not evaluate our own actions. You know, you just go, okay, somebody said this isn't good for us. Okay, well, it might not be good for them, just like the word says that your sin is not my sin. That particular song might not be good for you because you're not in control of yourself when you hear the music, the beat, the words, because it evokes something else that's down in your heart, some words, some other seeds that you planted down there. And that's what people have to realize, okay, you might not be able to do what I do. And let's not be offended or judgmental because I do. And I think that's what has become in this world. We've become so judgmental because people have become so comfortable in their lack of having accountability for their actions, whether it's the music, the lyrics, and what it makes me think about when we sit here and talk about lyrics, you know, worship begins as a prayer. You know, that's what it is. It's a prayer put to music. Rap begins as a poetry, put the music. So it's all a song or a letter to somebody, whether it is the lyrics is something from your heart, and then you put it to music and you're expressing it in some way. And that's where I began from that scripture. Out of that abundance of whatever we planted in our heart, you either pour out a prayer, a praise, you either pour out some type of positive poetry, some type of negative poetry. So it's that venom that's within us that we pour out on people, that we really have to be cautious of how did that venom get there. And it's not actually the person that we're taking it out on. So how do we've gotten so far away from Motown and from the meaning and from the experiences, how do we sit down in our communities? And I'm not talking about Black communities, just Black people. How do we sit down and talk in our communities and say, hey, this has an effect. How can we make it a positive effect? Because I remember music used to be very instrumental in our education when we were in school. And I know that's not really part of the budget anymore. They don't really talk about that. They don't do that. But the thing is, how can we make it back a part of not just the school, but our homes and our churches, where we sit down and talk about how this affects and this impacts things?
Yeah, and that's so cool. I'm glad you said that. I'll ask that because, again, it goes to community. And when we know that this is having an effect, again, it goes back to what you're doing and to motivate other people to do the same, to come together and let's talk about this music. Because something that you said earlier was so profound is that you're right. Music affects different people different ways. And we have to understand that too as well, or we could be less judgmental. That's why I do what I do when it comes to neuroscience. I wanted to help people to become less judgmental when it comes to learning about why we do what we do from an eco-biopsychosocial and spiritual point of view, right? Because when we understand it, right, we're less judgmental because we understand why we do what we do, right? And that was so great what you said earlier. I definitely agree. So, yeah, when it comes to community, I think that's why it's so important to come together as a church, too, when we find that if there is some type of issue with we're noticing with the music, what do? We have some type of meeting where we can invite the young kids, right, and sit down and have dialogue, about the music, about trying to just bring to somebody's attention as to what this music is doing or what it's not doing. Right. And I think it's so important because we got to think about, too, back in the day when we listened to certain music, our parents were probably saying the same thing about, oh, my God, they're listening to, well, let's just go back to the Europeans when rock first came out. Right. And they were going crazy saying, that's the devil's music, Elvis Presley. Right. And Elvis Presley was singing about love. Right, most of his songs was about relationships, right? But because of the way he was moving his body, it was and then again that also too had an effect on the males because they got jealous of it. They was like, look at this guy swinging his body, and the women are going crazy over him. It's devil music, So yeah, we just community, just getting together and having dialogue about what this music is doing or what it's not doing, and I think it's a positive thing. And again, I go back, I keep saying it, I go back to you. What you're doing right now is what's important, and a lot of people aren't really talking about this, aren't really having shows about this.
Well, I got one last question, and I know we've all heard this little old adage that says, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So are we saying that it's not necessarily the words that are bad? If we put it to a cute little tune and add a little fancy beat to it and pass it by in a nice little package, is it more acceptable? Or is it really is the words that are penetrating our heart and the beat just makes it more palatable to go down?
Yeah. You are. That's deep. Yes. Yes, it is the words. It is the words because, when it comes to music, we could be manipulated. So back in the day, I don't know if you remember, they used to make these tapes to encourage you to stop smoking or a bad habit, and you could hear music, but beneath the music is what the subconscious could hear. And beneath the music, the subconscious would hear the words, stop smoking, about smoking. And remember, they used to do this at the drive-in theaters, which show us, you know, things that are really fast and a subliminal conscious, right? And they would show popcorn and candy, and then you wonder why you were hungry, and you would go and buy popcorn and candy. So then they came out with these CDs and said, hey, well, we could do the same thing to help people break a habit, right? So it is still the words going into our subconscious. And that's one of the things that we really have to be careful, because yes, you could say it in a nice, sweet way, right? But the meaning is still there, and it still has an effect on you. So that's why we definitely have to just be careful, you know, and be more mindful. And how do we talk to our kids? You know, sit down with your kids and explain to them what they're saying, and explain to them the reality of what they're saying. And, you know, and explain to them, and this will stick in their brain, because remember, they're young, right? So this will stick in their brain. So if we talk to them earlier, not only will we teach them about that particular song, we'll teach them how to evaluate songs. We'll teach them how to listen to the lyrics. We'll teach them how to hear the lyrics and evaluate if that's what you want to keep storing in your memory bank into your hippocampus. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. If we have that conversation now, we teach people how to evaluate it in the future. So is this something, the seeds that we're planting, because at some point, these lyrics, these messages, they're going to show themselves. They're going to show themselves as fruit in our lives. So if you all journey back to Matthew 33, and not Matthew 33, Matthew 12, 33 through 37. I only read you all 34b because that's where we were coming from tonight. But 33 through 37 talks about the words that reveal our character. The words that reveal our character. So when you talk about that whole section of scripture, Matthew 12, 33, 37, is the words that reveal our scripture. And it talks about it because it's what comes out of our heart, what we planted in it, what we've stored in it, what we've stored up so we can spew it back out, so we can serve that fruit up to somebody else. So that's what we have to be conscious of. Like you say, in our mind, we take a lot of things for granted that we aren't absorbing them. The music we fall asleep to, the music we wake up to, the music that we just, in the elevator music that we self-consciously don't listen to. There's a place, sometimes you need to be in a place of silence so that you can actually hear yourself too and not hear everything else. So be aware, take that conversation that we're having tonight and really start evaluating, how does music impact your individual dance with yourself? Is it positive, negative? Has music begun to make you think negative about yourself? Has music in this world began to separate you and divide you from having a good relationship with God because you don't have that praise, you don't have that prayer that you've become intimate with God? Has it become to the point that all your relationships become so angry or so irritably easily irritated because of the music that you listened to before you actually arrived, and sets a tone and an atmosphere? Those things we really need to look at in our relationship. And I mean, it was something I really had to evaluate. I mean, because I love music. I love the beat. I love the instruments. I love the lyrics to a song. And I mean, I really have to. And I mean, as an ex-player in the band, I played a little jazz, I played a little classical. But as I became older, I had to realize, okay, I can listen to it all, but I have to choose the lyrics that are good with me. I can listen to any type of music, but it needs to be the lyrics actually speak to who I am. And that's at the end of the day. I'm not going to allow the lyrics to call me somebody or speak to me in a way that I don't want to be. And that's what we have to actually challenge ourselves to be evaluating. So what I encourage the listeners to do, to reach out to Dr. Sims. And definitely, I love the love song of lessons, where you go through and you break out about, and that's how we connected, because you were posting some wonderful musical stuff on Facebook, and I was loving it because it was speaking to me. It was speaking to me how music.
Oh, really, that's how you saw it, right?
How music impacts our relationship.
Right, during Music Month. And that's I was trying to motivate people to try to get to know more about, you know, the power of music and what it does. You know, the most powerful sound. That's why when we hear a piece of instrumental music or songs, it can transform your mood from happy to sad, or transport you back into time, to a distinctive memory, right? And what the memories are more distinctive or stronger than love. So yeah, and I just wanted to mention one song, one music that is totally awesome is God's music. And what I mean by that, I mean actually hearing the sounds of nature. Like when it's raining. I know a lot of people think I'm a little weird about this, but I really like going to the beach when it's raining, and it's so peaceful because I'm listening to God's music now. So I'm listening to the wind, I'm listening to the waves, I'm listening to the seagulls, I'm listening to the rain hit I would sit under the lifeguard booth, and I'm listening to the rain hitting, the lifeguard booth and everything. But I'm fine because the rain is not hitting me because I'm under it. Just listening to nature, and it's just a wonderful sound. That's why they made these CDs and everything, right? With the sound of of nature, right? And we can sleep off of that. I mean, and now YouTube, they have a whole bunch of them, right? You can relax. You can actually listen to rain if you're not around rain. And I've done that. Yeah, I'm here in California. Thank goodness. I mean, it's supposed to rain today. They say it's going to rain. We only see like a day or two of rain for the whole year, right? I might be exaggerating a little bit, but maybe I would say it would only rain maybe 4 times. You would see a big rain maybe 4 times. And it's, pretty hard rain, but it's not like East Coast where it rains all the time and storms and everything. But that rain is for a purpose. It's for us to relax, right? Yeah. And it's the sound. It's the sound that goes deep into us. And that's why, when I call it, God's music, it's that sound, and it helps us, and it helps us to relax. Yeah.
Like here on the East Coast, down in the South, when the rain hits a nice metal roof. You know about that to your little city, but in the country, when it hits the metal roof, that's like the sound to put you to sleep, like the beat, the drum of the rain hitting that metal roof. It is. I mean, it annoys some people, but I love to hear the rain hit the roof, let the window up a crack, and feel the wind of that wet rain come in. And I'm talking about that. Probably wake up with pneumonia or a chest cold, but it's the best.
But you're so right.
Sound.
You're so right. My family, my family is from Texas, and so my grandmother was from Jasper, Texas. So when she would come to Chicago, and my auntie in Flint, Michigan, whenever we go and visit anyone, my grandmother's sisters, anybody we go and visit, if they have a porch, we're going to be on that porch when it's raining, right? They have the food and drinks, lemonade or whatever, and they're in the chairs and they're sitting and they're talking. So that stuck on me. See, again, the brain, right? The brain, that memory, so that stuck with us as kids. So as we got older, and we started appreciating rain too as well, and how it's the time to relax and have communication. And just like you said, yeah, you're right. I can remember back then when I was a kid visiting some of my kinfolk that they did have the metal roofs. And when it rained, you can hear the rain, and it was like, wow. And it was like music, right? The raindrops hitting.
God's perfect, like you said. Yeah. So you all get connected. I want you all to go read that ebook, Why Do We Love Music? Connect that way. And what it says is God's music. It brings us to our featured artist, Diana Lynette. Her song, God Will Do It. God will play the most miraculous music sometimes, and you don't need to turn on anything else. He will give you the best concert that you could ever have if you just allow yourself to get into nature with God. He'll give you the best music. And all you have to do is just fall in love with God again, right where he has you. But we got to make time in our world. So you all connect with Dr. Sims. You all make sure you all show him some love. Jump over to his page, begin to follow him. Go get that download, that ebook. Why do we love music? And then you all stay connected because a wonderful lady is following us right after this show tonight. So I thank you all again for joining me on another Tuesday here at the Master Relationship Mechanic Show to have your best relation with God, self, and others. And I will see you next Tuesday again here on 108 Praise at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. See you again next week.
All right. See you later.
See you later.